Good evening, everyone. This is quite the crowd. We're excited to have all of you here. I am opening the special meeting, and then we'll have a public hearing, and then we go back into a meeting. So I just want to explain the logistics of this. And I'm going to do a roll call and ask each council member to say their name. We're trying to use technology to help us in minutes. So AI needs to get to know our voices. We still use city staff to check all minutes. I don't want anybody to think that we're living only in AI, but this is a way to be more efficient. So first I'll start with roll call. Amy Marosco, Mayor.
Tim Ritzer.
Trina Brown Hicks.
Khalil Saliba.
Joe Elder.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this evening, I'm opening the public hearing to specifically just consider possible uses for the new road farm field, including proposed tree planting and maintenance requirements. I'm first going to give this to Deputy Mayor Saliba, as ERC, the committee that he runs, has brought this. And then I've got a few other things I want to check with staff. But if you want to give a background.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. The mayor references ERC, and that's the acronym for Economic Environment Resiliency Commission. And it's newly formed as of September. It was formed because of the resiliency fund that we established in our most recent budget, which has over $1 million in it. And the purpose of that is twofold. One is to establish a fund that will be not replenished, but will be, we'll have contributions every year from various taxes, short-term rental and others, parking, transfer tax and property taxes. A percentage of that will go into this fund every year and hopefully raise about $500,000 a year. We want to make sure that we have an established, robust fund if, in fact, we ever are struck with a major weather event and we need that funding to bounce back. So that's the primary purpose of it. Nevertheless, we also have provisions in there that permit us to spend some of the money proactively on resiliency projects. So that way we can be prepared for a major event, but also do what we can to mitigate primarily flooding, but other problems that we may have. So that's the background. And one of the things, and so we are proactively looking for projects that we can invest in, and this is one of them. We have 20 acres, that the city-owned property off New Road. It was primarily used for farming for many years, but now is reverted back to the city. And in trying to determine what kind of use for that property is something we've been working on. And really, from when we heard this issue in our commission, there was a strong consensus, almost unanimity, that we look and try to take advantage of this through a Delaware Forest Service program where they pretty much fund the program at about roughly 90%, and the state's match is around 10%. So for this one, I believe it is around $85,000. The total cost, and the city's share of that would be between $5,000 and $7,000. So it's a very cost-effective way to plant trees there that are going to be, resilient themselves. We don't want to plant trees that are going to die in 3 years and have to be replaced. So this is what we're looking at today, and this has been the proposal. And I will ask one of my colleagues on the committee, Janelle Cornwell. Do you have anything to add, Janelle, from that?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay.
City engineer, but actually Brent, you're on that committee, but is there anything you want to add? I don't think Andrew's here from GMB.
Yeah, Brent Jett is from our engineering consulting firm, GMB, and he also serves on the ERC committee.
The only thing I would add is that it's a great value. You're creating tenfold value in the dollar that you're putting in. You're taking the liability of the health of the trees and the survival rate on the state. So the program's going to take that. This city's not going to take responsibility of that. And it's it's going to build the tree canopy in Lewis.
Terrific.
Thank you. And then to our city solicitor, I think some clarification about, given that it's open space and that deed of land.
Thank you, Mayor. So about 15 years ago, the city already,
I can't hear you.
can you hear me now? Better? About 15 years ago, the city already agreed to keep this land in open space in perpetuity. And so that is going to continue. Reforesting the land is in agreement with the comprehensive plan. And I think that is a consistent option.
Thank you. Anything from the city manager? Nope.
Nothing.
Dad? Okay. All right, let's move on. Our city tree commissioner is going to give a abbreviated version of the briefing that she's given many times. That actually was the initiation of this concept.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to thank all of you. From the time I first presented this a few weeks ago, you've all worked at rocket speed to try to get this to fruition in one way or another, and I really appreciate that. The city staff, the mayor and city council, Parks and Rec, and wow, all the residents that show up. And from my standpoint, I haven't heard any bad options put forward. You know, nobody's asking to put pickleball courts here. It's all about.
Start another
Don't
fight.
start that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't start a rumor, right?
Don't start a rumor. The tree commissioner wants pickleball.
I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
So let's go through it real quick. There's this PowerPoint is with the agenda. So the proposal would be, next slide, to plant trees on, there's approximately 20 acres at issue in that farm field. As we all know, the trees are great for stormwater management, and the great part is there's a grant from the Delaware Forest Service. It's called the Forest Resiliency Fund. And they pay 90% of the cost of planting the forest. They do all the logistics work, all the work of planting it. We keep it mowed for a few years, and then after that, it grows trees, hopefully. So a little more detail on that. Total cost to the city. After you pay for mowing for a few years and so on, I calculated around, give or take, 10 or 11,000. Because we would have to mow for a couple of years. It's best to apply as soon as we can, and here's the reason. It's a rolling grant. You can keep on applying, or they're going to keep it open for applications until they run out of money, which hopefully won't be for a while. But the Forest Service is letting contracts now for the spring, and they want to get the orders in for the trees as soon as possible, because native trees, they run out of stock. So we want to get this nailed down and get our application in as soon as we can. And I appreciate everybody working hard to get to that point. Let's see, we can skip page 4. Let's go to the map. So this is the basic map. The big portion, of course, is where the farmer farmed. There's a portion next to Canary Creek subdivision, which is actually part of the buffer that's the buffer between Canary Creek subdivision and the field. That was supposed to be all trees, but we discovered a couple years ago that the farmer was actually mowing part of it so he could maneuver his vehicle. So we'd like to retree that and reforest that buffer, so it's all buffer the way it's supposed to be. It's all tree buffer, forested buffer the way it's supposed to be. I'd like to point out in the lower left corner, at the edge of the field, there's some brush and trees and things. Just on the other side of that line of brush and trees, that's a marshy area in Canary Creek. I think it's technically part of Great Marsh. Somebody could correct me on that, but it's certainly Canary Creek. So it's right there. The water all goes right there into the marsh. So we're trying to protect the marsh, because we all know how good marshes are for managing stormwater. All the good things you get from planting trees, rare opportunity to reforest land, and aligns with our nature-based solution. It's all good. You probably all agree with that. Okay, overview. Page 7. Yeah, we have to have a minimum of 3 acres, so we could do less than 20 acres. And Delaware Forest Service pays 90% of the cost to prepare the field for planting, purchase bare root trees and seedlings. They do all the purchasing. We don't have to do it. They do it. They purchase the tree tubes, and the tree tubes are there to, they're about 4 feet high. They're like corrugated paper, except for they're made of plastic, and they protect the tree. The main thing they do is protect the tree from deer. They also hold in some moisture, so it helps with, water. You don't have to water the trees, and they've had good success with that. They plant the trees, they install the tubes, they have contractors do that. Then we do follow-up maintenance for a couple years. We have to mow once or twice a year. And then, again, the state pays 90% of that cost, and the city will pay 10% of that cost. And they also need tree tube maintenance done. The state does have contractors that will do tree tube maintenance, and they're going to look into whether we could get Master Naturalists, which is a volunteer group, and see if that works. But that would be worked out later. Okay. So the way this works is, next slide, the trees. Delaware Forest Service plants trees at about 10 by 10 feet apart. It comes out to 8,700 trees about for 20 acres if we plant 20 acres. They are all native trees and shrubs. Their goal, what they do, what the forester in charge of this program does is she looks at the soil on site. She looks at the whole site and the soil type. She picks trees that are suitable for that soil type in that location. Their goal is to find at least 8 different species, 2 of which are shrubs. I have a thing about flowering trees. What happens is once a forester comes up with this list of trees, we can talk about where they go in that 20 acres. And I made a kind of offhand comment about pretty trees along New Road. But the Forest Service goal is to have a good forest, have a healthy forest. And if they say, no, that doesn't work, then it doesn't work. It's that simple. We want a healthy forest, and that's the bottom line. But if we get some pretty along New Road too, that's good too. We'll see how it works out. Okay, cost to the city again for the initial planting, the total cost comes out to around $80,000, of which the city's share would be $8,000 if we plant the whole 20 acres. Next slide, we have to mow a couple times a year, once or twice a year. The forester told me that usually after 2 years, the trees are big enough to shade out a lot of other plants. It might not require mowing. We'll just have to keep an eye on it. We may want to mow it some more. We'll just have to see. And then tree tube maintenance, I mentioned that. Plus the city long-term maintenance. Again, the goal is to create a natural forest, not a park. We won't go through and prune these trees the way we do street trees. Let's see. I would like the city to mow the whole perimeter so that we have access to the whole field. That'll also allow people to go walking their dogs there if they want to. Growing the trees. Again, we plant, the initial planting is at 10 by 10. They expect that some of these trees will fail. Some of these trees will outcompete each other as they grow. That's what happens in real forests. They told me they expect a 40% survival rate at 10 years. I've had other experts tell me that seems low. They expect a higher survival rate than that. I guess we'll see. Maybe they're under promising and hope to over deliver. We'll see. But that still means that at 10 years, that's like almost 3,500 trees.
Yeah.
If we plant 20 acres. Next steps. Well, we apply for the grant, and then the city would work with the forester to create a stewardship plan and work out the details. Access to the forest, in my opinion, by foot, not by vehicle. You don't want a lot of vehicles going in there. It's just a dirt and grass road going in there. You don't want a lot of vehicles in there. It'll support the vehicles needed to actually do the work, but I wouldn't want more than that in there. And we wouldn't want a lot of random vehicles driving around with all those little tiny trees anyway. No watering needed. I mentioned that. The tree tubes help with that. The forester did say that even in 2024, with that drought we had, they had a good survival rate of seedlings that were planted that spring. So hopefully that helps. Make a meadow. this is what I had written before, that I recommend not make it a meadow. And I pointed to Great Marsh Park Master Plan, which has a place for a meadow on the plan. I have another PowerPoint to show you that I think there's another way to look at that. So I'm going to bypass that at this point. Other possible uses. I don't think we have to go over that at this point. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, tree tubes. If you look on the right side, that's what a tree tube looks like. And I think the ones they use are 4 feet high, which if you look around the deer cut, it's mostly about 4 feet right in this neck of the woods. That's where the deer nibbling on your shrubs. So what happens is you put these tubes on, you leave them on until the tree grows big enough. And then that's part of the tree tube maintenance, is knowing when to remove the tube and let the tree go on. On the left is the seedling trees. These are really tiny. They're like a foot, maybe less, sometimes less, and really tiny. But it works really well. I mean, if you plant them correctly, they do really well. So I'm gonna circle back, and a few days ago, I met with Rodney Robinson, who pointed out that meadows are really good for the environment. So do we have we have another PowerPoint slide to show you. As you know, meadows are very good for the environment. And what's really the best is when you have a combination of meadow and forest and transitions between the meadow and forest. That's where a lot of wildlife activity happens. And so one of the potential uses for this is to use part of this field as a meadow. And my initial take on that was meadows are expensive. We already have a place at Great Marsh Park for meadow. Well, the place in Great Marsh Park for that meadow right now has a whole lot of trees growing on it. Now they're invasive pear trees and autumn olive and other things we don't want for the most part, but it will be a while before we identify funding to remove those and turn that into a meadow. What we have right now on the new road field it's a meadow now. It has more invasives than we would prefer, but it's a meadow now, and it does support, it supports deer right now, actually, and other wildlife right now. I walked through and I found a hole that I think was a foxhole, and there's other things in there that I probably didn't even see most of what was in there. So the concept would be, let's go on to the map. It's like the fourth slide in. So here's the concept we're dealing with. The idea would be the perimeter would be all trees. And we plant that all in trees. That wide yellow line, that would be an access road that we keep mowed, so we could get in there and you could walk your dog there and what have you. And then in the middle, we'd have a meadow. And also along the edge there, next to Great Marsh, we'd have the meadow. And for the short run, all we do is mow it. That's all we would do is mow it. And we monitor it. We identify there are native plants there. We've seen them. Find ways to encourage the native plants. And then we could slowly introduce more natives, broadcast seeds or plants or shrubs here and there, that sort of thing. We wouldn't have to tear it all up and turn it into the perfect meadow all at once. That's the concept here. So that's another environmental win, if you ask me, and Rodney, to have part of this made into a meadow so that we have another kind of habitat. And it is true. You leave a field alone, it'll turn into a forest. Now, the trouble is, if you just leave it alone and turn it into a forest, most of those trees will be invasive. But it's hard to find meadows. We don't have very many meadows around, and having meadows right next to a forest where you have that edge and that transition between the meadow and the forest, that's just really good for supporting wildlife. I think that would be a win. So I think I'm going to leave it at that, and then we can see what else other people had to say.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
So let me just explain kind of how we're going to do this evening. We're going to first go to all of you, the public. Remember to say your name for the record and your address, and you are limited to 3 minutes for your public comment. Then council can ask questions. In this case, the applicant is our tree commissioner, but there may be some clarifications that we need to have. Then we are going to close the public hearing. Typically, you know, we keep the comment period open, but we want to make sure that council decides whether this is a go or no go. We want to hear your comments. So that should we decide to go, as you heard, we need to get moving so that we're in the queue, because cities all over Delaware are applying for this and the stock. So we're trying to do this as nimbly as we possibly can, given the time frame. So at this point, going to turn it over to those in the room. Raise your hand, come forward. If you want to get in a line, that's fine with me. Come forward, say your name, address, and give us your comment. Go ahead, Rodney, you could start first. And I just want to remind folks that at a public hearing, we don't engage with you, we hear you. Then we go into our deliberations. So please, when you ask a question, know that we're listening, but we're not engaging.
Rodney Robinson, 203 Canary Drive, Lewis. I might have thrown a wrench in the works here, but I think that it would be very important to have a combination of forests and meadow in that 20 acres. It's kind of the last 20 acres the city has of anything of that size, and I don't think we want to get it wrong. I think just planting it in trees is a little short-sighted, because meadows are extremely important in the ecosystem. They're also terrific if you want to talk about ecological resiliency. If resiliency is an ecosystem's ability to withstand and recover from a disturbance, it's much easier for a meadow to do that than a woodland. Okay, high winds knock trees over, meadow bounces right back. A fire, meadow bounces right back. Flooding, even with salt water, meadow bounces right back. So it has a tremendous resiliency character to it. Not to downgrade woodlands, they're very important also. Meadows also have great carbon sequestration because it's all in the soil. They have a dense root system. They control runoff. They give it an opportunity to go into the ground and recharge the water table. So there are a lot of other things to recommend a meadow. But one of the things that's foremost on my mind is wildlife and creating an environment where we have a real diversity of habitats out there. And as Marty was talking, you have a forest edge, a meadow, and that's where all the activity occurs, is on that edge, in and out of the forest. The meadows support all kinds of wildlife, from insects all the way up through birds and mammals. And those that are in the forest come out into the meadow and forage and feed and go back into the forest. So you got to think in terms of systems, not just one kind of habitat. I think that would be enormously valuable. I've got 42 seconds left. So I would say, you know, turn half of it in around the border into a woodland planted by the state. The center part would be the rest of the 10 acres. You don't have to touch it now. It's an old field in a very early stage of growth. And so you really don't have to touch it. You could mow it next year, but you don't mow the whole thing. You only mow a third of it at a time because you don't want to chase the wildlife out. See? So now mow for the woods, plant the trees in the spring. Thank you.
Barry Duncan, 305 Samantha Drive, Canary Creek. I'm also the Commissioner of Great Marsh Park, and that's kind of I have twofold interest.
Hold just a second, Barry. Blue, please don't start their time until they've said their name and address, because that's not fair to anybody. Sorry, we could have given you 4 seconds back, Rodney, which you can claim if you'd like.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to restart you after you. Some people have long names and long addresses, and that's every second counts. Go ahead.
We just had a meeting here last Monday, and at our final meeting for the master plan for Great Marsh Park, and it was very successful. I want to make sure this plan is developed in concert with what we're going to do at Great Marsh Park. So I want the forest management plan for Great Marsh Park to dovetail with what we do in this space, because it's right next to and part of it, or part of that open space. With the two pieces of property, we're talking about 86 acres of open space. My focus is on habitat restoration, and I think the other two spoke a little bit about that. In the last 5 to 7 years, we've had no less than 5 new developments in and around that area. 2 of the closest are Harbor Point and Lewis Waterfront Preserve. Both of them were entirely fields or meadows. The greater portion of all those developments were built on farm fields. So my focus is habitat restoration. And most people in the community or near there know how much the deer have destroyed residential landscape. The HOA has had to pay to fence in shrubbery that covers up gas tanks and electrical boxes and that kind of thing. So again, my focus is habitat restoration, and I think that contributes to resiliency also. There is no problem with storm water management in the area. So that's the other point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Others would like to speak? I'm Janice Pinto from Rodney Avenue. And I want to, first of all, compliment all of you for working on such an important, vital issue that we all have. And Marty and all of you have done such a fantastic job. In the 20 years that we have lived here, we have seen the destruction of forests all up and down New Road. It breaks our hearts. And we fought hard. We live on Rodney, so we are adjacent to Fisher's Cove. And the trees that were just decimated there. And the stormwater surges that come in that make all of us vulnerable because of the loss of trees all over is something of great concern to all of us. The floodplain that has been decimated with over 1,800 truckloads of fill coming in and leaving the adjacent properties in the floodplain and raising the levels where they're putting their homes out of the floodplain. We've lost all the trees to help us with flooding. And so it's not just Rodney Avenue, but it's, when you look at the topography of the land, it's people at the end of Hornkill who are really adjacent to the wetlands that are really more vulnerable than we are even. And we really need trees. We are really in favor of 20 acres of trees and appreciate what you do, Rodney, with the meadows. And meadows are great. So let's change our lawns into meadows, but we need trees. So thank you very much for listening. Here.
Good evening. My name is Tom Howard. I live at 317 Lightship Lane. I think this is a wonderful plan. My interest is to protect it. What do we do with hunting and trapping and use by neighbors, and how's that all going to be looked at what happens when it's damaged? Is this gonna raise or use the money of? I don't have the answers. I don't know if posting and putting signs up or not, but that's a concern to have. The other is, what prevents the creek from rising up into salt water into what we're planting? I know it's hard because it's downhill. I've seen water go a long ways, and I don't think a fence is gonna do anything but stop it both ways. I wish you would consider that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Other comments? And you can use the podium or the table with the mic, by the way, for anyone.
Gail Van Gilder, 516 East Cape Shores Drive in Lewis. I have no vested interest in whether this is a meadow or a forested piece of property. But I do have a little bit of concern about what I heard tonight in terms of foresting, the plan with forest around the perimeter and an open meadow in this middle section, because of the fact that we know that the designation of open space in perpetuity, which was read to us at the last meeting, there are many things that can be built on that meadow if you get access to it. And so we need to make sure that whatever we do, that there's permanent protection on this piece of property, such as what you did with the 4th Street Forest. You put a conservation easement on it, I believe. And if this had a conservation easement on it, then we could do, whatever is best for habitat, for resiliency, for flooding, etc. But I think that needs to be taken into consideration. You may not be able to figure that out tonight. I understand that. But I think that's what's needed here. And but because of that, looking at that layout and remembering what was read at the last meeting, I mean, you could build a library on that piece of property. You can build structures on open space. It doesn't mean it stays open. And not to mention active recreation and all the various playing fields, et cetera, that could go on it. So that's what I wanted to make a point of this evening. But I hope that we can move forward with getting the trees, because that's a short timetable. And we need to do that as quickly as possible. And then we can figure out where we're going to plant them and all of that, and what the plan would be and how much of it should be whatever. But hopefully with the consideration of permanent protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in the room? Yes.
Good evening, Doug Spellman, Samantha Drive, Canary Creek. At first, thank you all for the work you've done on this so far. I would just like to second a couple of comments that have already been made. Not opposed to meadow or forest. I'd like to see more forest than meadow. I don't know about 50-50 split. More trees soak up more water on a longer basis. I know there's benefits to both. The amount of wildlife in there, I saw 6, 8, 10 deer and a big buck chasing him this evening before I left the house. But as much as anything else, a couple issues. One is the open space and perpetuity issue. Now, I heard Solicitor Burns say that it has been designated and acknowledged that it's open space in perpetuity. That's the first time I've ever heard that legally. And that's wonderful. That's good news. The next thing is, what is open space? And I would like to ask this council and mayor to consider defining this piece of property as open in perpetuity with no active recreation. If it can be passive, that's wonderful. But years ago, 13 years ago, we fended off soccer fields with lights and trucks and parking and a lot of things that were absolutely not what the arrangement that made this piece of property come to the city where there was a developer, there was a group of active citizens, and they worked together. And the city was the benefactor because they said, keep it open, keep it protected. And that was the trade-off that brought this piece of property to the city of Lewis. So, and just sort of closing, I'd love to see you pull the trigger and make this happen tonight. You have the ability to vote on it, I believe. I know you have some factors to consider, the cost of mowing and so forth, but the resiliency issue that's here is the cheapest resiliency you're ever going to get in this city. There's no more property like this, and there's no greater benefit for fewer dollars than can be had. So I'd appreciate if you could pull the trigger and make it happen. So thanks for your work and thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Hello, Greg Woolston, 225-450 Callaway, Lewis. I'm also a Delaware Master Naturalist volunteer. So I'm all in support of more trees since Sussex County has lost between 40 and 50,000 acres of trees since about 1975. And the statistics for songbirds and insects are no less shocking. So, planting trees is great when you bring in native species like oak trees, which host over 500 different wildlife species. It's great. And, with that, as far as having a meadow space is great too, because when you plant that many native keystone trees like that, it will bring in the native species, the songbirds, the butterflies, the caterpillars, which are the main source for songbirds. So, very important. So I think that's both ideas are great. I think there's room for some meadow space as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Russell Small, New Road. For context, that field belonged to my grandfather and his family for generations.
That's nice to know. Thank you
Yes.
for letting me know.
And so I'm grateful to the council for their work in restoring it because my grandfather's family cleared it for farming. A couple things of note that I was listening to. Number one, the bridge on New Road is a state project, has really nothing to do with the city, but they ran out of wetlands. In the northwest corner of that property is wetlands, and it's also a cultural spot where Native Americans lived and died. My grandfather excavated a burial site. It's in the Smithsonian today. And so I may want to consider expanding that space as a meadow, but also as wetlands. And perhaps by designating that, the state would have enough space to do the bridge, which we know is desperately needed, right? The next piece I heard was, and believe me, I understand the wildlife habitat need. My hosta can attest to it. But I heard, the exterior or the perimeter of the property to be mowed. People could come in, walk their dogs. I don't know if that is the best use of wildlife habitat because, the dogs will drive the animals crazy. They run them off into the yard. If it's going to be natural, maybe make it natural. If people want to come back there and walk, it's great. But then bringing your pets, I think could cause a problem. I just see it as onerous to the property. If the spirit is to restore it and restore it completely. Anything else?
Thank you.
Next, I'll speak. This gentleman, and then Terry, you can be next. No, come forward, please, sir.
Good evening. My name is David Ennis and I live at 50 Harbor View Road. As I had sent by a text that I put in through another meeting, I was one of the folks that negotiated with the developer of Canary Creek when it was originally being laid out and got them to agree to donate the 20+ acres that is now part of the city. So we have a little bit of parental interest in what's going on. I appreciate Mr. Burns' comment about the open space. I have a small section that is in my notes that I'd like just to read, and it elaborates that the agreement further provided the property conveyed hereunder shall be deemed open space in perpetuity as described in the open space district section of the City of Lewis zoning code as in effect on the date of this deed. Now, I don't know whether that changes anything or not, but from a personal point of view, that seemed like a pretty significant phrase, as of the date of the deed. The gentleman who just spoke has a very keen interest in what's going on, but I think it was his grandfather that I was able to spend some time with, and I apologize, I do not have the actual axe head, but he found a 3,000 or 4,000-year-old axe head on the property. That's as old as the pyramids in Egypt. And I believe that's a significant archaeological find for that neighborhood. And I believe there are still 2 sites on the property that have eligibility to be registered for the historic places. And I would just like to encourage that the tree planting not damage any of the archaeological sites that are known. At this point in time, I appreciate the tree proposal, and I think it's a good idea. But I just wanted to mention that there are some history facts going on with that property that I think would be worth monitoring. The Division of Historic and Cultural Affairs has already been notified about this meeting, and I believe would be very willing. They are the occupants of the Swannendale Library or Museum, and I think they could be happy to work with the City of Lewis to find a safe way to put the trees down so as to not damage the archaeological stuff. I think that's pretty much what my comments were. And I thank you for the work that your folks are doing, and I thank Marnie for the tree proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Anyone else in the room that would like to come forward, and then we'll go to folks online. Right, Derek?
All right, so for AI, my name is Thierry Poiret and I live on Harborview Road. Now that everybody has said, all the good that pretty much everybody in the city thinks of this idea, I would just like to refocus what I believe is important to do today. First, I'd like to say that from my perspective, of course, creating a green lung as part of the city's environmental resiliency program is a fantastic idea. The trees planted on the property will offset some of the sacrifices that were made east of Route 1 in recent years. The resiliency forest will have a beneficial impact on air quality, chemical pollution, and traffic congestion while providing needed space to wildlife, replacing some of the habitat that was lost to urban development. For now, however, the utmost and conceivably only action item for the City Council should be to empower the city manager or maybe another city official to apply for the grants that will make this project feasible and affordable, and also to make a firm commitment to appropriate the funds that are necessary to complement the grants that will be provided, hopefully, by the Forestry Service. It is necessary to adopt these action items so that the grant application is valid. We all know that the state of Delaware is facing financial challenges and that funds available today may not be available tomorrow. So this is an urgent matter, and the city should decide to proceed with the grant application today, this evening. As for the exact design of the resiliency forest, including access, there is really no need to make an irrevocable decision now, and the City Council could defer to a later date after stakeholders and bodies with expertise in the matter have had more time to weigh on the matter. Regarding the possible meadow and maybe a multiplicity of clearing instead of a large single meadow in the middle, it is clear that this feature would be beneficial to the forest winged and furry residents. So I, of course, support this concept, but the details of how this will be accomplished do not need to be discussed today by the council so that we are not distracted from the main purpose, which would be to approve the grant application and appropriate or make a decision in principle to appropriate the 10% that needs to be appropriated so that the grant can be obtained. And this is all I have to say on the matter. I'm sorry to bring everybody back to earth and to the necessities of administration. I wish to thank the council for this initiative, which will benefit generation after generation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's one more that wanted to speak. Yes. Yes. Okay. Just saw a hand go up.
John Kiker, 608 Pilot Town Road. I think we have an opportunity to plant trees. Anytime you have an opportunity to plant trees, we ought to plant all the trees we can plant. I mean, this is important. It is critical when we have this opportunity that we plant as many trees as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, come forward.
Good evening. My name is George Terrell, 50 Harbor View Road. I think the tree initiative is just a wonderful idea. Sounds like a great dollar value. All the major points about the resiliency have been hit on. As far as like with the meadow idea, the fact that the trees are only going to be small whips and seedlings for quite some time and at 10 feet apart with high mowing, wouldn't that equate to a meadow-like situation that would occur like almost like a natural succession type planting that it could take care of itself, especially if you're going to get a certain amount of tree loss, then the meadow that may take over may be more or less where it should be in the first place. But I do want to say, I think it's a wonderful idea to get the trees going. And I would say, pull the trigger on that as soon as possible, before, it's taken up by anywhere else in the state. So, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, come forward. And if you are online, we are going to soon, so raise your virtual hand so Blue can let us know, but come forward, so.
My name is Jeff Roth. I live at 207 Red Cedar Drive. I like trees, but I think the main concern, the reason why I came for New Road is the gentleman spoke about the bridge. I think the bridge should be front and center, because if you don't have a bridge, nobody can go anywhere. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room that would like to speak? All right, Blue, is anyone online that has their hand raised? Debbie Vol. Go ahead, Deb. I always love this part, and it's always, can you hear me?
I know. Can you hear me now? Great. Okay. I always love this part too. I've been in front of you many times, this configuration of mayor and city council and previous, speaking about the importance of trees and replacing the loss of addressing the loss of canopy in Lewis. I think we all know that that's a critical need. I do want to make sure that there is a full understanding of the history of this parcel and how it came to be open space in the city of Lewis, and appreciate that David Ennis, who was one of the people who negotiated that, is here. So can I ask you, is there a need to reiterate that? to review that process for anyone? Or is it a full understanding in mayor and city council?
You're just going ahead with your comment. Go ahead,
Okay.
Deb. And
Well-
also, Deb, before you go further, and remember, everybody online, you also do need to give us your address. So could you do that? Stop
Yes.
the time clock. for us?
Harborview, yes, 10 Harborview Road.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll make this part very brief. This was negotiated as open space in exchange for higher density in the Canary Creek subdivision. And this land, in my opinion, should always just remain open space. I don't think we need any more recreation in this area sitting between two residential people's backyards and then the Canary Creek development. I think that we need to address our loss of wildlife habitats and get these trees. I don't think that walking paths are needed. We're going to be having a lot of this in the Great Marsh Park. What I see is living in an adjacent neighborhood, a lot of wildlife that are displaced by recent developments in the last decade. And it's okay that they're here in my neighborhood. I truly don't mind, but it's not where they are safest and it's not where they should naturally be. I think we have an opportunity to plant a forest at a relatively low cost. We should not hesitate and miss this grant opportunity, because I do think it might be the greatest bang for the buck we can get. I would say if mayor and city council are going to consider a meadow and tree proposal, to look carefully at what the maintenance cost for each would be. As Mr. Terrell said, due to the attrition, and I know him as a bit of a naturalist, even though he would underplay that himself, we may end up with partially a meadow and partial forest. And both are going to help us with recharge, but we desperately need it. And I urge you to accept this tonight.
Thank you. Who else raised their hand online? Mary Ann?
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Mary Ann Zweig at 202 Samantha Drive. I've lived there for 11 years, and I'm going to take all my 3 minutes, and I'm going to go down my list. So the first part is, looks like the meadow is a greater percentage of the trees. Is it possible to do an asymmetrical meadow? Because a lot of animals don't go with flat lands. If they want shelter, you might have a small animal that's not feeling safe in a meadow. So maybe connect with a naturalist at the national parks or state park to see how you can create that space. All right. Somebody on the comment list talked about soil bearings by Canary Creek. Has there been soil samples? All right, that's next. I'm all for the trees, the quality of life for humans and animals. We really need to bring that back. When will we know about the list of trees? Who designs this? Is it possible to have a pond there? I mean, that's another option. Is there a runoff that a pond could be created? All right. What kind of shrubs? Hollies? I mean, are we going to see a design? Is this the last meeting? Are we going to see a design of this? And finally, I guess it sounds like this is the last open space. And you were very successful. Everybody was with the Run Forest Run project. And I want to say, keep running Forest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else blue online? Hand raised. Anyone else in the room? There was a comment. Can you read that comment, Blue?
Elizabeth Innes, 50 Harborview Road. I'm in favor of increasing tree canopy, resiliency, and habitat. I'm glad to hear Commissioner Duncan has a priority of habitat improvement as well. We can figure out the paths, dogs, technology sites before spring. Grab this opportunity while we are able.
All right, so I'll turn it over to council, but before I do for your questions, I just want to clarify one thing related to DelDOT, because that was raised by a couple of folks. So we are working directly with Senator Huxtable. Pardon me. DelDOT is looking for land. We all know that because they have to offset related to their mitigation. However, when they get the credit for that, it can't be current open space. It has to be something that is not zoned open space that then by their action becomes open space. So that little bureaucratic nightmare, actually, I've already talked to the Attorney General. Should we need some of this space, Senator Huxtable and the Attorney General will work with us. However, Senator Huxtable has found another possible parcel that may be better for Delta. So I just want those who have raised this to know we're in the second position. If they need us, we are going to come forward, but Senator Huxtable and the Attorney General are going to help us through that process. It may be that Senator Huxtable can work this arrangement with another parcel. So I just want to update everybody on that. All right, questions from council to our response, comments. I'll start with Councilman Ritzer. And we are going to deliberate after the public hearing, but if you've need some clarification, please feel free to ask that. We have a lot of experts in this room.
Thank you very much. I am going to take advantage to ask a question of someone who spoke before us for the purpose of my own education and the room. And that was a comment that Mr. Howard made, Tom Howard, and he spoke about the possible effect of saltwater intrusion, that is water that comes from the creek up into the field. And this question is something that I think we need to consider, should be considered. And if not by us as well as by the forester. And I would also ask if Mr. I know that Russell Small, I was going to say Small Russell, excuse me. If you, as a property owner, as a property that's been in your family for many, many years, if you know any experience, of the field, portion of the field flooding from Canary Creek?
The flooding in the Canary, only in the northeast corner,
right?
Where it's the lowest. The soil is super sandy there. And it was habitat for people because it was comfortable, but it hasn't flooded there in some times because it floods on to the bridge and road instead.
And you're saying it's the northeast corner or the northwest corner?
Northwest, I'm sorry, northwest corner. Yeah.
And so that is not where the Pagan Dyke is that correct? It's not.
No, that is a little further south, but on the west side of the property.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was built to redirect the creek.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
By the Dutch.
Thank you. I appreciate certainly the enthusiasm and the interest that this community has demonstrated this evening. It's a room full of people. And I've listened carefully to your comments. They've been excellent quality and I understand the program. I appreciate Marty's presentation once again and Rodney's as well.
Thank you. Let's go around the room. Councilman?
Now, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who spoke. It was really interesting to hear about the artifacts that were found. So I think that's important as well.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor?
No, I just want to acknowledge our tree commissioner, Marty Thompson, along with Commissioners Barry Duncan and Rodney Robinson. In the beginning of this process, which wasn't that long ago, there was definitely like differences of opinion, meadow versus trees versus meadow. Mr. Spellman mentioned earlier, made a valid point about what is going to be the proportion? Is it going to be 50-50, 70-30? Those are all really good questions. But I just particularly want to acknowledge the three commissioners who really sat down, worked together, reached a consensus, and that's very important. And this all happened fairly quickly. And I give them all the credit, and I give Marty particular credit for identifying this program with the Delaware Forest Service. And we've had conversations with Laura Upman, who has been helping us with this. And, sometimes people, think government's supposed to work really quickly and respond quickly. We find out it never really happens that way. But this project moved along pretty quickly. And again, kudos to the three commissioners.
Great. Councilman Elder?
Well, I'd like to be sort of assured that in 50 years, a child that's 15 now, who will be 65 then, can say, I helped plant that. So I want to make sure that as this process moves forward, that we have an opportunity to bring our young people into this project, maybe with the planting or the care, or maybe even learning how the grant takes place. I know we have a lot of young people from the high school coming over and working in City Hall, learning. And I just think that would be a really important thing. And I know there is a person here tonight, he didn't speak, but I think the Scouts might be interested in being involved in this.
Thank you. I have a couple of clarifications. So I'm going to go to our city planner on open space. Just want to have a better understanding. And thank you very much, Mr. Ennis, for getting us the information, and thank you to our solicitor. So this is in open space in perpetuity. However, there was certainly concern from the public, but what else could you do there? Can you give us a little more clarification of what we can and cannot do in the open space?
So there's an entire list in the table of permitted uses. I would have to go back and see, because the table has been updated a few times. But I don't think the open space zone has been updated. I think except with the addition of beekeeping, that's been since I've been here, we added beekeeping to the list. Throughout all the zoning districts. I don't believe the uses have changed. So it does allow for like community gardens, certain retail establishments are permitted, certain through processes. So a lot of the more intense retail service establishments require conditional use, which require public hearings before both the planning commission and mayor and council for their consideration. Again, yes, a public library is something that is permitted. But so are public safety facilities, a marina, but again, that wouldn't make sense for this area because there's no access directly to the water. But there are a number of uses, but they would have to go through a proper process to be allowed.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And to our solicitor. So listening to the public, it didn't sound like people wanted to have a lot of buildings. So that's open space. I wanted to go to the city planner first, but I would like, before we go into session to deliberate, can you give us some advice? How does should council want to approve this? How do we put the guardrails in place that it stays to the intent that we heard from our public?
So as we heard, open space has a few different uses beyond just parks and community gardens, for example. So back in 2010, through the deed under which the city received the parcel, there was an agreement that the city would retain this parcel as open space. And that sets a floor. So you could go stricter than one of the open space, than allowing all open space. You could allow only certain open space.
Okay.
Obviously, by planting trees, you are restricting some development. And this is owned by the city. So ultimately, the city will decide what to do with its land.
Okay, thank you. And then a question that goes to the commissioners. The combination of meadow, the habitat piece is a strong message, and tree canopy, and meadows natural. So though we may decide to defer to all of you on the details, and we aren't all experts in that, but my question is there anything that is requiring, or by your three recommendations, the percentage share? Or commissioners, if we say, with our blessings, go forward and do the right thing, how do we do that? In other words, how do we, rather than a response by council that says we want 72% to be this, and, you know, I don't want to put you in that kind of world. So I'd like a better feel of, is it all open to that? Is the state forestry accepting of that? I want to make sure when we get to our action that we understand what needs to be done from an environmental standpoint.
As far as what the state requires, they say 3 acres or more. That's what they say. As far as this particular possible use, you know, I haven't had, the forester we've been working with, Laura Upham, has been unavailable in the last few days. She has some other things going on. And so I wasn't able to ask her this particular question about the meadow. But the only thing I remember from things she told me is that, you know, you need to, they planted columns and rows so you can mow easier, you know. We can work that out with whatever shape of meadow we come up with. So I don't know, other than having at least 3 acres of trees.
Okay.
I don't know of
That's
any
the-
reason.
That's the minimum that has to be there to
Yes.
take advantage of this program.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't profess to be a forestry expert, but from the research that I've done, what I'm seeing is a minimum of a third of the parcel if you want to do habitat restoration, a minimum of 1/3 of the parcel.
As a meadow.
Yes.
Okay. Rodney, any reaction or response to that?
I think given the 20 acres, it could be 50-50 and it could be, you know, 60-30. I don't know that we have to be concerned about that. And any of the design or the conceptual planning of this will be done in conjunction with the state foresters, as I understand it. I mean, they'll come in and they look at the ground and they tell you, this ground is suitable for these trees and that group is, and they do a lot of that homework, and that's great. Yes, they plant in straight lines and because they use a machine, but there's no reason why we can't change the configuration and work with them on that. The only constraint at this point I could think of is that we have to say, no, we want to plant 10 acres or we want to plant 12, and that's how they do their calculation. I think that's the only thing holding us up. So Marty and I kind of said 50-50. We're both happy with it.
Okay, so there's no real magic to that.
Yeah,
I
okay.
hear
There's
you.
no magic number.
Right, okay, great. All right, so given that, I'm going to, no other comments, we're gonna close the public hearing at this point. However you want to stay and watch us work, you're welcome to do that. I can't go back to someone who's already spoken, even though I know you'd like to, Terry, but AI knows your voice. So given that we've had all of your comments, thank you. We also had some comments online came to us before that we have read that were all in favor and raised a number of the same issues that you all raised. So given that, I'd like a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. I am now opening the special meeting to actually discuss with and possible action on tonight's presentation. So let's start first with, we've got a timeline. We got to get a grant application in if we want to. So let me first start with just a sense of council, not the specifics. Are we all in favor of moving this forward, or does anybody have reservations at the highest level?
I have no reservation.
Nor do I.
Okay, so we're gonna go forward. So it's a go. All right. Now let's talk about what that go means. Are there things that you heard tonight or things you know from your expertise that you want to put into the direction to the city manager and the tree commissioner as they apply?
I think I have a kind of a question with regard to that. What I'm trying to understand, there's a little bit of discussion about, do we plant 30% or 50% or whatever? If we're paying $8,000 toward the total cost of the grant, whatever the decision is made, once we approve it, if we decide we're going to go with 100%, will that cost cover 100% planting or whatever we decide? Or are we limited to only 400 and some trees?
No, it's,
No, no,
it's
no.
an acreage. It's an acreage issue and it's
It's
10%.
an acreage
It's
issue.
acreage issue and then it's 10% is our share, our burden.
Okay.
Of that.
That's what I was trying to.
Okay.
It should be less than that.
So it can be less than that. That's the kind of the maximum it would be.
That would be the
That's the
max.
maximum.
Okay.
Okay.
So when we approve this tonight, do we want to approve for the maximum so that it can be?
Well, I think if we approve for the maximum, we didn't hear the meadow side. So it
Right.
doesn't
So
sound to me
that's
like
where I'm trying to.
we're not going for the whole shebang as a forest based on the
Okay.
comments we heard.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
I would even suggest in response to Dr. Elder's comment, excuse me, given the fact that we are fairly late in the grant application, and from my conversations with Marty, where it's tied to the state forester is tied to the acquisition of the trees, that possibly some of the allocation of what will become meadow versus trees will actually be determined by the availability of stock, of the
Okay.
tree stock.
Could be.
So I like the idea that we are granting there, that we seem to be advancing the idea that we're gonna endorse this forestry opportunity. But the actual percentage of acreage that could be forested will be determined by the availability of the plant stock.
Okay.
And then we can approach it with what's not planted in trees could be made available for.
That's a good explanation. I just wanted to make sure that whatever we approve, it will be enough to fulfill the plans that are ultimately decided upon by the folks that are doing all this.
So we could put in a condition of up to 40% for meadow, up to 40%.
Right,
That doesn't
something
mean
like
it's
that.
40%, but up to 40%. That allows the state forester to get some communication. I think it reflects the interest from the public. So a little more significant meadow. Now, what's also interesting in meadow planting, particularly like oaks, because they are so beneficial to 500 species, really, when you count the little insects, there could be in the design, and I would leave that up to the experts, placement of key trees, even in the meadow areas, okay? Because that actually encourages the highest response to the meadow. So I personally think, from my experience in meadows and being a master gardener, that you want to have a design that is not just it's this and this, it's actually the whole design for the whole place. And so that allows some flexibility that I would turn over to the commissioners.
Yeah.
But when we get to the point of making a motion, if we put up
Right.
to 1%, I think we address that concern and the availability of stock.
Right.
Councilwoman, do you have any other things that you want to put in? Because we're going to start to create a motion here.
May I speak?
Oh, yeah.
May I offer something else?
Yep.
I'm going to pick up on something that Gail Van Gilder spoke to, and that was the idea of she suggested the conservation easement. It's difficult for me to understand how the city can put an easement on its own property, but I'll leave that to the city solicitor to figure that out. But if an easement is not an option, is there another way that we can actually condition the use of this property so that it can, yes, remain open space, but that it would be not developable with buildings and so forth?
Yep. At a more global level, you could amend the zoning code so that open
Correct.
space is more restrictive.
Right.
And doesn't have so many possible uses. In this specific project, you could do a conservation easement if there was another party that was interested in the conservation easement,
Right.
which is the state sometimes does that. You could also condition your motion on minimize the potential uses.
So I think that the best option related to that, Councilman Ritzert, is at some point we send back to the Planning Commission unrelated to this project. Please relook at your open zone, what's allowable, because perhaps some of those other things on any property is not the intent where we are now. And I think the solicitor, my experience with conservation easements is you do need a third party.
Mhm.
I think we'll be stronger if we stay on the conditioning side and really restrict to communicate
Right.
what
Yeah.
are the guardrails that we would
Exactly.
put on this one parcel.
And,
And we could.
and
do
that would bridge us until
would
we get
bridge
the
us
next.
Exactly right.
Yes,
Yeah.
I understand.
So I think the conditioning. So at this point, the motion's going to have some percentage on Meadow and it's going to have some strict conditions to keep it as the way we all think about open space.
I'm sorry, but I'm not following you. First of all, conservation easement was most used recently for the 4th Street Preserve.
But it was held by a third party.
Right, but it's also because that was not open space.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know why we would need a conservation easement when this is already
Well, I don't think
open
we-
space in
Right.
perpetuity.
I don't think we need a conservation easement. I think conditioning it. See, right now, open space allows all these other things.
Right.
And so
Right.
what we want to do is condition this parcel, I believe, to put some guardrails that, no, you can't put a building on it.
But that's part of the permitted uses.
It is permitted use.
So we're now gonna change the code?
No.
We're not changing the code. You're always allowed to put conditions on an action. So this parcel, not open space, this parcel the idea would be this parcel would have some specific guardrails that limit it in the open space zoning that you cannot do X.
Alex, can we place conditions on a project or anything that conflicts with current code?
So it wouldn't be, no, you cannot do that. This would not be conflicting with current code because open space zoning allows for, say, 5 or 6 potential uses.
Permitted use,
You
right.
could condition less than 5 or 6 to 1 or 2 options, such as a park or conservation, something similar to what a conservation easement would typically have.
So you're staying within code. You're just saying this, not that, within the code.
So we can't, but we can't say, sorry, we can't have a library here.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
You do that.
Yes, you can.
Why? It's permitted. And if we're going to condition it and aren't we, that's my point. Aren't we contradicting existing code?
So it's further restricting the menu of potential uses. So for example, you could prohibit beekeeping here on this one individual parcel that's the city-owned property. You have more discretion because it's city-owned.
So we're not,
So,
we're not changing code at this action. We're conditioning, looking at the code so that we avoid structures, I think is the main.
Okay, so when you condition something, where does that condition go so that in 50 years, they'll know they shouldn't do certain things or can't do certain things? Does it go in the deed or?
So it would go in writing, but by majority vote, you could go back on that because it's the city's property. If you decide one day or a future council decides one day that they want to allow beekeeping, for example, that could be allowed. But you would want to put that in writing, perhaps in a written resolution or the minutes, and we could look back at that.
So how would a strict condition be considered as a part of a motion? Because I'm just thinking that you're not saying what those strict conditions are we?
One of the things we could put on only one condition, and that is clarifying that for this parcel, no building, physical building structure, minus a building that might be needed for maintenance, could be something, would be allowed. That would be one way to do it. So in other words, there's no structures that would be there.
Except for a maintenance building.
It could be, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just
Yeah.
offering that as an option. I could imagine that,
Oh,
there could be equipment during the time.
because I think when Janelle read it, the description, it included commercial, retail, right?
Right.
And so picking up on your suggestion, I think you're suggesting that we would speak specifically to eliminating that commercial development. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
That's what good to know.
So just for clarification, those uses actually require a conditional use.
Right.
It would actually have to go through multiple public hearings and public processes.
Yes.
So I don't know if you really just
What if we did it something like in our direction, as the solicitor's saying, that it's the intent of this council that this parcel is treated in perpetuity as open space and conservation.
For the use as a meadow and or forest.
Yes. Then it says what it is. And then as you're saying, is should somebody want to put up, a commercial box business, they have to come forward
Right.
and go through that.
Which
Okay.
it's a process.
That process does
I think
require.
that's cleaner.
I think that's cleaner, but I think there's nervousness in our public that there could be a different agenda from another council that all of a sudden opens that back up.
But even if that was the case, as Janelle has mentioned, just because it's a quote unquote permitted use doesn't mean they can automatically just apply and.
Exactly.
Correct. Most of
Yeah.
the ones that
Yours guardrails.
most of the ones I mentioned that are retail or office related are a conditional use. They are not outright permitted. A permitted use is beekeeping. So if you want to have a community garden here, or if the city wants to have beekeeping, city can allow that. If the city wants to allow for retail sales of a certain size, it actually has to go through a conditional use. It is not a permitted use. It requires a conditional use approval. So it's actually not just outright permitted. It's just a use that has that in a certain manner could be considered.
Okay, so a future council has a different perspective. If they see by our record what our intent was, think about it like a preamble.
Right.
This is to be really conservation, preserved, open space. Then we are sending the intent, but we're also allowing the process that's in place to run its course.
Right.
But I think without it, we're not fully reflecting what the public has said unless we add that. I believe in preambles. I think they send messages to future generations.
They frame it.
Yeah. There are other things that were raised that I want to make sure that would be in our motion. And one is the archaeological site and also archaeological and the indigenous artifacts. And so that we are very respectful, that we are not planting or digging up any property. So it sounds like we can get some information on that, where that's located. And so the design would have to take that into place. So I think that would add in, I think the issue about pets needs to be discussed by council because that's a big issue. So I just rescued a puppy. I love dogs and I have cats. However, if we're trying to keep something as the way that this is sounding,
Right.
it sounds like, sure, you could walk in, but once you start bringing pets in, you actually change the dynamic for wildlife. And so I think we should put on the restriction of pets not being allowed. That'd be one of my recommendations in the condition. Agree? Kind of that feeling?
I do. I wanted to go back to the notion that there would be a community garden there, because is that just something that's allowed in open space? Because if you would put a community garden there, you would have a lot of people coming in and digging up the ground and putting up fences to keep the deer away. And I think that is more like a utilization of a park.
No, that was one of the examples of a permitted use within the open space zoning district.
Well, we probably wouldn't want that to happen though, would we? We wouldn't.
No, it sounds like you're making a motion to consider up to 40% being a meadow, and that, any future use be limited to a forest and a meadow on the property, and limiting like the building to be like a small
So there really
maintenance
be no
shed.
space left.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
all right.
that's the protection
Yeah,
of that.
That's
Yeah.
a protect.
Right, exactly. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I do have another
Close.
question.
Go
though.
ahead.
You mentioned beekeeping, and I think beekeeping is absolutely wonderful for the environment. But what I was wondering is, if the city owns land, do they allow people to put their bee boxes on there if they come to the city and ask? It's just a question because
That is something that could be considered, but property owners also have the ability to have bees on their own property.
Okay.
So when the city adopted that,
Yeah.
every zoning district, I think except for one, allows beekeeping within the city on their own private land.
Right.
Okay.
The one other last comment that I don't think is go in the motion, but would go into the process, which is how the public is kept abreast of it. So Forest Street deputy mayor and the team working there is doing a great job. And so they're going to periodically come back to the public and share, here's where we are and ideas. So this is a big tract of land. So just like Great Marsh, when you had Great Marsh and this 86 acres, I think, Commissioner Duncan, you said, this looks like, this is a big swath of land. It will be. And so probably something in that process has to involve just keeping the public aware. And so that's not something that is in a motion, just kind of direction. Let's always let our public know the good news of what we're doing, and there might be some folks that want to see things. All right, so right now we need a motion on a percentage of the meadow, and also no pets, and that there is a preamble.
I'll make a motion.
All right.
So I make a motion to authorize the city manager to apply for a grant from the Delaware Forestry Service for the property in question, based on the availability of planting with up to 40% of a meadow, and with the conditions of open space that this parcel does not include any commercial buildings or structures, except for possibly a maintenance building. And the intent of the council is to treat as a meadow and forest with no commercial use, respectful of the archaeological and indigenous aspect, and restriction of no pets.
So a comment on your motion. So that part about the facilities that I was advocating for, that I'm withdrawing, is because we're going to let the process run, but we're going to put into the motion that it is council's intent that this stays in as much of a natural setting as possible. If you add that, you could take that friendly amendment and take out that second part, we're going to let the process run.
Okay.
Is that okay with you? Is that accepted?
Accepted.
And
Okay.
just to clarify your motion here,
Wait a second. Go ahead.
this is a resiliency project, and associated funds would come out of the resiliency fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should be approving, thank you for that. We should, adding to the motion, approving the related funds.
Can we have some discussion about the motion?
We can, as soon as I get a second on it.
Okay.
I need a second on that motion as amended.
I'll second it as
Second it?
amended.
Okay, now open for discussion.
I wanted to ask about the shed, because if we're saying no buildings on it, and I don't know why one would need a building on it.
We're
not saying no buildings.
It's taken out of the motion.
Okay, that's taken.
That was taken out of the motion.
Okay,
Sorry for that. Okay,
then I'm fine.
you're fine. Okay. Any other discussion on it?
I have, I don't know if if we can go back and do this, but we can maybe do it now. I just wanted to make sure that the city manager would be applying in consultation with Marty Thompson, Rodney Robinson, and Barry Duncan as well, who have the expertise and have been engaged.
I think that's a good friendly amendment. Can you accept that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay.
Don't make me repeat it.
No, exactly. I think we're there. All right. All in favor of the motion as amended twice to approve this with those conditions on the percentage of the meadow, no pets, reflecting the archaeological site, and asking the city manager to work with subject matter experts of our tree commissioner and also park commissioners. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Congratulations, council. That's a big movement forward. One other quick item that that is on, and it's new, E2. We were planning to have a public hearing related to proposed ordinance change on H Park. And that was planned for November 10th. What we didn't want to have happen is for people to show up on November 10th, when we were postponing it. But following Robert's Rules of Order, we're enacting an emergency provision, which says when you don't have enough time to advertise to the public, you can use this. You don't use it often, but we just want to use it for the record, that I would like a motion to say we're postponing that, because I don't want people on November 10th to show up and then I tell them they wasted their time coming. We're going to postpone it to a later date. So I would like I'd like a motion to postpone it's E2, to postpone the public hearing scheduled for November 10th at 4:30 regarding ordinance 14-25, ordinance to amend chapter 197 zoning, article 6, Historic Preservation Architecture Review Commission.
I would like to make that motion,
All right.
as you
As
stated.
I stated, a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Terrific. Okay, now, public comments. We are now done with our normal meeting. Would anybody like to come forward from the public? Congratulations.
There's someone coming up.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come forward? You're welcome to come to the microphone.
I just wanted to clarify, what it's, Gail Van Gilder,
And your address?
Cape Shores, East Cape Shores Drive. And what I was having difficulty hearing about what you just voted on. So initially, Amy, you had, Mayor Rasco, you had said that it would say something about for purposes of conservation, but I think that what it actually said was, then you said something for natural purposes, as much as possible. And I think that was a little different. For conservation was much stronger. And that was a concern. So how did it come out? Did it come out just for natural?
Can you repeat that?
Maybe
It's
can
actually
Ashley
comment.
do that?
It's a public comment, so we're not engaging, but we
Oh,
hear your
right.
comment and we'll be
Okay,
careful in what's
but you
written.
you can fix that if you need to.
Yes, thank you.
And then the other, what was the other thing? The cultural archives as far as, did that get into the?
Yeah.
It did, okay, I
Yeah.
missed that. And then just on the meadow issue, I didn't get to bring up earlier, and we can figure all this out later, as we said. But I am concerned, and we need to think about if we're going to have a meadow, that we do more than just mow it and hope it becomes a meadow over time, because to have a really viable meadow, I think we have to, at some point, consider plants that are appropriate for a meadow and plant, grasses, shrubs, et cetera. I'm not the expert on this, you are, and Rodney and I have talked about this. But we need to think about where we would get funding to do that going forward, longer term. And so that it isn't just left as kind of a farm field and then we don't have the funding to do that and the money to maintain it. So I think it's a great concept, but we will have to put some effort towards that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to make a comment? There's actually a gentleman behind here and he had his hand up first. Come forward, sir.
My name is Luke Hastings, and I with Hastings Marine Construction, 10372 Old Furnace Road, Super Delaware. I want to thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak during the public comment period. Again, my name is Luke Hastings, and I'm the owner of Hastings Marine Construction LLC, based in Seaford, Delaware. At your meeting on September 24th, 2025, Council voted on the Canal Front Park floating dock replacement bid and awarded that bid to my company. A letter from the city was confirming that bid award was received by us later that week. We then began working to prepare the job by clearing calendars, arranging for materials and labor to perform the work within the timeframe required. This work continued until we received notification on October 13th that the bid was withdrawn because our bid included an option to use certain materials that were not included in the original bid request. I note that we included the material at no additional cost, even though material is more expensive. Other bidders also included with their bid materials outside of the bid request. At the pre-bid conference, bidders were told, and I'm paraphrasing, "You're the experts, give us advice." We followed that instruction, and our bid included an option at no additional charge. The withdrawal letter stated that the city determined to rebid the project and has opened a new RFP for the project. To say that I was surprised by this letter is an understatement. Having reviewed the agendas and available minutes for council meetings in the interim, it does not appear that the decision to withdraw the award of our bid was made by council. Perhaps it was missed. Perhaps I had missed that in the record, but if the decision to grant the bid was made by council and the decision to rebid was not, this bothers me. The rebidding process has also put our company at a disadvantage when our competitors know the specifics of our bid. The original process included sealed bids. Those bids have since been publicized. Competitors know our price and our offer. The process has also caused our company reputational damage. The public was made aware that the bid was awarded to us. However, the public was also aware that a new RFP has been submitted without any explanation given. Rumors and innuendo can harm businesses such as mine, even when the cause is at no fault of our own. We are prideful in our work and our reputation. Should the city choose to proceed with the rebidding of this project, we have faith the city will give our company a fair shot, but we question the process by which this matter was even sent out for rebidding in the first place. And I ask council to consider proceeding with the original award so that work can be completed without any further unnecessary delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anyone in the room?
Excuse me, Edison, 35 Sussex. Thanks, everyone, Marty, and you guys did a fantastic job. Could, with all this new tree planting we're going to do, could it be possible to consider planting fewer trees in George H.A. Smith Park? Thank you.
Thank you. Was there anyone online with their hand raised?
I don't see execution. I'd like to know more detail.
No. Any other comments? Terry, come forward.
Yes, thank you, Thierry Poirier, Harborview Road. If I understood correctly, it is the wish of certain members of the City Council that the Planning Commission take a look at the possibility of establishing a new zone for resiliency and conservation areas. So I will bring that up with Janelle and my colleagues on the Planning Commission, and we will see if anything is feasible in this area. I think establishing a new zone might go a long way towards assuaging some of the concerns if we were to convey both the 4th Street Preserve and the new conservation area into that new zone, thereby eliminating all extraneous usages except those that the council would then want to reintroduce as part of the modification of the zoning. So I think that's one thing that we can think about. The other one is, and I know that the council is not answering question, but maybe the attorney is allowed to answer a question. I was wondering if it is possible for a city council, a municipality, to unilaterally, you know the word, in a unilateral manner to grant a conservation easement to an association which is dedicated to the preservation of the environment, thereby relinquishing any possibility for a future council with less benevolent and environmentally oriented thinking to revisit the decisions made today by the council. So that is a question for Mr. Alex Burns, if he's allowed to answer. Is not allowed to answer.
Not public
very
comment.
good.
Anybody else for public comment? Anybody online? No. So let me just conclude this with when folks in the public ask us questions, it's just that we're not engaging. Pardon me, I have to go allergies. It's not that we're engaging tonight. It doesn't mean that we didn't hear you. And so we will take that into consideration, all the public comments that were made, and then appropriately get back as we need. Okay. Did you have a public comment? Yes, a public comment. Yes. Okay.
More of a question. Is it,
Of course.
is it necessary for the Recreation and Parks Commission to meet regarding this tomorrow night?
So that's a question that Parks and Rec has been raised. It's on your agenda as a presentation. It's to keep them aware. It's my understanding. Is that right?
So the discussion at the last Parks and Recreation Commission meeting was that it hadn't heard the whole proposal. Marty gave an update on her presentations to Mayor and City Council at the workshop, and then the EERC committee. But they wanted to have an opportunity to hear it, and I think we can update the whole commission tomorrow with what Mayor and Council approved this evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.